rabbit hole that is reality. It's about casting light on a whole spectrum of topics. Our interests cover in such many bases. We snapshot the stories that have caught our eye in the news, information that raises eyebrows and questions, or reading stories between the lines, covering how they may affect us, looking at science, technology, discoveries and the environment, as well as at mysteries, history, strange tales and the Fortean, all rendered up into a convenient package and delivered straight to your mind. Whether you're listening in search of knowledge, or dipping in for entertainment, we're people just like you, passing our social commentary on what inspires and affects us. Welcome to Rabbit Hole That Is Reality, Episode 12, in association with UK Collapse Radio Network. Thank you for choosing to spend time with us. I shall be your host, Kristian Lander. www.rabbithole.thatisreality.co.uk is the where to point your browser. Every episode is available to play, stream, listen, watch and download, coupled with a summary and links. We're also available on YouTube, where you can just search out Rabbit Hole That Is Reality. We're available also on iTunes, and you can also add the RSS feed to the likes of Miro, Banshee, and many other podcast players that are out there, so you can have new episodes delivered straight to your media library automatically as soon as they are available. We have a public folder available on Dropbox that you can be linked to, and we also have available to download via the P2P peer-to-peer BitTorrent network as well. You can find the torrent on our website. We're endeavouring hard to make it easy for you to find and to listen to us. You can also follow us on social networks such as Twitter and Facebook, as well as Google+. You can find myself, Kristian Lander, at Define Kristian, and at Sylvia Dragoon for Sylvia, sitting over there in the production booth. And you can also find us on Facebook just by searching out Rabbit Hole That Is Reality, and you can find that also on Google+ as well. The nights are certainly drawing in as we come to the end of Summer's End, or Samhain, or Summer's End, Samhain. Or shall we say that is Oid-hc-he Shamh-na in traditional Irish, or a Welsh Nos Calan Gaeaf, the Eve of the winter calendar, or Hollantide, or Hallows Eve, or in the modern song Hallowe'en. Interesting celebrations, going back to our ancient cultures. So where we're going to be looking at today, we have a full show today, with lots to talk about, and that's how we like it, and we are sure you do too. So without further ado, let's have a look at the contents for today's episode. We're going to be looking at the cinema texting aisle concept. That's right, you've been annoyed in the cinema when someone sat there on the phone and can't seem to ignore it? Yeah, we've certainly been there. Well, cinemas across the US actually want to introduce a texting aisle. Charity chiefs are getting over £600,000 a year. There's virtually no sugar on sale at Asda. And while people suffer on the streets and in their homes, struggling to live and to pay the bills, bosses are raking enormous pay rises and companies are boasting record profits. And on top of this, MPs want a humongous pay rise. HMRC, the Human Rights Commission, wants extra time to be given to an assessment for the rights of the Free Speech Lobbying Bill. And further to this, the Human Rights Commission further wants to make a stance on the highly intrusive legislative powers designed to catch everyone out, not just terrorists. Children in the UK are facing what they are in the US. Seclusion rooms are going to be used across schools in the UK, and as Ian R. Crane puts it bluntly, grooming kids to be big pharma's cash cows of the future. Schools across the country are now going to be teaching Chinese as a second language as opposed to a European language. And we're also going to be looking on the tech front at Ubuntu and the announcements by Isohunt this week as well. We investigate what has been dubbed the Black Knight, a satellite of mysterious origin, neither American nor Russian, perhaps extraterrestrial. We go in depth to talk about celebrities who claim they are possessed, or have been possessed, ghost reports from our own archives, because you can't have Halloween, you can't have Samhain without certainly a ghost story. And when one investigates anomalous phenomena, the unexplained and the paranormal, it invokes a typical reply when you state this to someone, and that is, have you seen a ghost? If so, what happened? Well, for the first time ever recorded, I actually am going to tell you some of the experiences that I've had. Not to mention, we're going to be looking at the Fortean archives as well, for some quirky stories that have happened throughout history and today. So how many times have you been there in the cinema, and there's a person, while you're watching the film, with their phone out? And it's the blinding light, of course, is everyone can't help but see it, and they're on Facebook or they're on Twitter, and they can't seem to leave Google Plus alone, or that they can't seem to stop leaving IMDb alone. It's just so frustrating, you know. Why would you pay to watch a film to sit there and look at a small screen? I mean, what, are you just sitting there for the silence? Well, the thing is, those cinemas aren't silent at all because everyone's got their phones out and everyone's going, put it away. It seems that AMC cinemas in America could soon be having what's called a designated texting aisle, or their mobile phone aisle, for those who can't seem to leave their phones alone, who are having an obsessive compulsive disorder to constantly be looking at Facebook. This is their genius idea. So will it help people go to the cinema who have that desperate need just to see if they're being liked, or just to see if they've been retweeted or plus one? I mean, of course, if you go to a cinema, you're going to watch the film, right? If you want to look at your phone, you can look at your phone after the film. Oddly enough, I mean, the first thing you see people do when they get up from their chair is instantly turn the phone on, and they instantly click Facebook, or they click Twitter. And it's just like, what the hell are you people doing? Can't you just leave it alone for 5 minutes? Or an hour? Surely. And then you think about what happens at dinner tables. You know, when you go out for a meal with your friends, and everyone's sat there on the mobile phone. Or you'll find you got someone at the table is texting someone who's at the table instead of having a conversation. I mean, come on, people. Yeah, we're supposed to be social beings, you know, not social via a screen. But going back to the concept of having a texting aisle, do you think it'll be more expensive or cheaper? Because technically you're not watching the film because you're watching your mobile phone device. Or will it in fact put up the prices because they need to make the people who aren't doing that have therefore a premium seat because they do not have people on the mobile phones? I don't know. There could be quite a money spinner if that is indeed going to be the case. In this social commentator's opinion, you can at least do the bare minimum that it is. The work has been put in to make the film, to make the content, everything from the producer to the director to the grips, the guys who are doing the lighting, you know, a whole industry there is to put this magnificent film together, you know, and the least you can do, as you're paying for it, is watch it. So turn your phone off. So what's your opinion on charity? Charities. I think there's two views in charity actually, and I think that there's one who believe that they are philanthropic people who basically work at a lower rate of pay for the good and the benefit of mankind and for the people. And there's some who do it for a limited time. They go out, like they go to Africa or whatever. They do some kind of charity work. And then those who are charity management. And charity management, as far as I'm concerned, it's thick and it's corrupt as banking and politics. And the way I say that is because I can remember when Tony Blair was talking about having the big three. You had the public sector, the private sector, and the charity sector, and all are big business. Now there was a pay probe that has been launched by former newsreader Martin Lewis. He's the chairman of the NCVO. Now he says that there's been a salary awarded to Professor Philip Sugarman. He's the chief executive of St Andrews Healthcare, which it states is the largest mental health charity in Britain. But when you look at this guy's pay bracket, my God, man, he gets paid more than the Prime Minister does for the role of being the Prime Minister. Now, I say what you will about it. I mean, that's about 150 grand, whatever. Mr Sugarman was awarded £653,000 a year. And it's just for the 2012 to 2013. That has an increase of 18% on his previous year's pay, which was £552,000 a year. Not bad for a charity worker, and not bad for a charity organiser. They employ about 3,000 people. They provide mental health care and support to those with disabilities and brain injuries, and they do community-based care. So, I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, they're getting 600 grand for his position. I guess that his managers under him might get around 500,000. Yeah, then the regional managers might get around 300,000. And you're kind of thinking, Jesus, but the people who are doing the jobs aren't getting paid anything. They're getting paid and they're signed into contracts, so they're forced to go to, well, not forced to go to work, they're expected to go to work and expected to do these kind of roles and support the charity. But the money being given to the charity, etc., is just going clearly into his pay packet, into his bank accounts. And talking of pay rises, I mean, we're currently facing the worst depression of all of human history, of all history. I mean, many people are unsure whether to turn on the heating or to buy food. The energy companies now raking in the highest profits ever. I mean, you can see it in the papers all the time. Oh, they got more money than this. We've had this amount of £1 billion extra this year. People are shouting at the government, hey, stop them doing this. They're hurting the most vulnerable in society. So what do the MPs go and do? Well, they're demanding an 11% pay raise. That's right, an 11% pay raise. I mean, that means if you're getting 100 grand, you're going to get 11 grand extra. But 11 grand? Who's going to pay for that? Oh, well, we are. That's right, we are. We're going to be paying for this. This was revealed it was going to be revealed in the Sun on Sunday. Depends, of course, when this airs. It's sort of going out on Thursday. on UK Collapse Radio, and you might have been hearing about this maybe Wednesday, but I recorded this, of course, on the Saturday evening when this story broke on the web. So the chairman of British Gas, owned by a Russian energy giant Centrica, Sir Roger Carr, he quotes as providing, because you got to get this as well. This mixes into the story. Basically, he provides high-level advice to the Prime Minister. That's right, the boss of Centrica is an advisor to the British Prime Minister. And there's Prime Minister going, well, just switch energy companies, or just go home and wear a coat. I don't disagree with that point of view, actually. If it is cold, put on a jumper instead of walking around the house in a t-shirt. I completely get that. But there's this whole intermingled relationship, isn't there, between the energy companies, the private sector, and the government. They're literally seeking together to take money out of the public pocket. And I think it really is to put us into a position of austerity intentionally, because no one has any money to pay for anything. Now, Nick Clegg actually defended the meetings, saying it'd be wrong to keep the energy bosses out of number 10. Quote, now, as much as the Archbishop also, he's raising his sceptre and stamping his foot about this as well, and he's demanding that firms show their generosity, not just to maximise profits. Well, unfortunately the case, despite their own forthcomings there, of course, because they helped Wonga, and they're helping the arms sales over in across the world from England. So I think asking a money-hungry corporation to ease off making profit for the sake of kindness is just, well, it's not going to happen, is it? We know this, you know this, and I think everyone really knows this. But people you know are suffering, yet we stand by idly with normalcy bias happening, firmly rooted with their head in the ground, waiting for the whole thing to blow over. And like everyone says, like everyone does, as my colleague put it more bluntly, it doesn't matter as long as it doesn't affect me. I don't care. So maybe you do care about this, because I feel it's important to get this message out there. I think it affects you in some way too. I certainly hope so if you're choosing to listen to this. So yeah, write to your MP and say, hey, what the hell's going on here with this energy thing? How come you're demanding a pay raise while I'm sitting here, suffering? Why is that? Why are my friends out there, struggling to pay the bills, and you're demanding, if you want 100 grand, that you want like another 11 grand? But you're seemingly not doing anything. All you do is attend a meeting that you may or may not attend, and you may not even reply to me. But talking of the government, as we do. I was looking over, there's a brilliant website online, if you want to know a little bit about politics. It's called politicshomes.com, so politicshome.com. It's kind of a summary website, effectively, of all of the cases that are going through Parliament right now, and their actions afterwards. What's happened from it, what bills have been put forth, who's speaking and when. I actually found it really interesting. I don't really pay that much attention to politics, other than raging about what's going on, but there's a guy from the Joint Committee on Human Rights. They published a report on antisocial behaviour policy bill. Now within this, there's lots of things that are a little bit dodgy. Howell Francis MP, he's the chair of the Committee of Human Rights. He basically is saying, look, we've got to make some amendments to this because what you're doing is wrong. The amendments, of course, were spoken in Parliament, and actually, I had a look at what these were. He's suggesting amendments to the bills as it adds concerns to the current powers of access, search, examination, copy, and the retaining of data in regards to personal electronic devices is far too wide, and questions whether the powers required now extend to passwords on electronic devices are now required to be handed over. They recommend the government, brings forward proposals to introduce safeguards for certain categories of materials. Does that mean currently? These are amendments they want done to current act that's in place. So currently in place is the ability for the government, should they ask it, to take your passwords, they can obviously demand, if you're a journalist, they can demand your sources. There's nothing you can legally do about it, and that's why they're obviously campaigning on this bill. And he speaks here, and I'll read this quote out for him. My committee welcomes the improvements to the bill in regards to very wide counter-terrorism powers to stop, question, detain people at ports and airports, given the current nature of threat of international terrorism, but we must accept the government is going out of its way to have an unusual stop, search and question without suspicion. So currently you can be questioned, you can be taken, you can be held, you can be prosecuted, you can go to court without no judiciary protest, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's the current process, so I can certainly understand why we should be making a statement about this and going, why the hell have you done this? And the same day, actually, the same guy, Human Rights Commission, wants more transparency in a bill on the lobbying, non-party campaigning and the Trade Union Administration Bill. Generally speaking, I don't really know that much about the trade union. Non-party campaign, I don't really know enough about it to even give a proper discussion on it. But what? So my committee finds it unacceptable that he has not been able to report on a bill that raises human rights issues on an account of the unnecessary speed that the bill is being taken. And this amounts to an abuse of Parliament's legislative scrutiny process. This is not the first time that's happened during this Parliament. So really, no one's even got a chance to look at it. But it's being forced through Parliament, kind of fast-tracked to be made into law. Yet no one's had the ability to read it. So no one really knows what's in it and how it will affect people. Certainly regarding funding, lobbying, trade unions. Shouldn't this be a thing that we'll actually get a chance to look at and assess properly? This is what they're doing, guys. This is what's going through. So I think you ought to contact your MPs and say, what is this? Let's have a look at this. What is it? How will it affect me? How will it affect others? How will it affect freedom of speech? Using the very best open source software arranged into a complete package of an operating system bundled with lots of software. Not to mention it's beautiful, it's secure, and a whole global community come together, thousands of people, to make the very best open source operating system in the world. They volunteer times and skills to make Ubuntu better and better and better. Released this week, Ubuntu 13.10, dubbed the saucy salamander, is now available. It's available for your PC. I run a dual boot system here. I've got Windows 7 and I dual boot with Ubuntu, and I also have a different PC that runs Ubuntu. What's really cool is that now its release also includes a release for the server, your mobile phone, your smartphone, your tablet, your TV, and the cloud server as well. Now even Microsoft are actually in on this one, because them along with IBM and HP are now partners in using Ubuntu's cloud software. You can now also dual boot your Android devices as well. I mean, Android is a Linux-based operating system. And what's really cool about it is that all your Android apps boot seamlessly. They load up seamlessly on your phone. So giving your mobile, your tablet, and your home PC the same convergence. So it's really cool. I literally can log in my PC at home, and it's on my TV. It's really cool, and that's available right now. I highly recommend you go and have a look. Go over to ubuntu.com to find out more on that one. And keeping with the technology theme, we're looking also at Isohunt. Isohunt has been around for 10.5 years. It literally has been one of the pioneers of the BitTorrent file share and peer-to-peer network. So not only are they closing, they're also going to be forced to pay $110 million. Now, as of today, they were actually still open. They were still open for business online today. I did have a double check, but they have stated they will close and this week. So you have the governments working with the NSA, JCHR, etc., the snooping charter, exploiting the internet and for their own good, gathering data, mass data, big data as it's called. So you have the chief movie industry watchdog guy talking about this thing also with Isohunt. Today is a major step forward in realising the enormous potential of the internet for legitimate commerce. I saw a post today uploaded by Ian R. Crane, in fact, and it was talking about seclusion rooms that are infamously used across the United States. In fact, there's a YouTube video to accompany this as well, regards to how they want to use these seclusion rooms, padded cells effectively, for schools here in the UK, instead of having to deal with the child and the individual needs that person has. The idea is you're going to put them into a secluded padded room, let them scream it out, and there's some quite disturbing footage, in fact, from the YouTube video that accompanies it. And this video I will make sure I include on the website of rabbithole.isreality.co.uk, where this will be uploaded, so you guys can have a watch as well. But yes, seclusion rooms across the UK in schools. Talking of schools across the UK, HSBC are now funding a rather interesting project across the whole country. That is, they want Mandarin Chinese to be the second language taught across schools across the UK. Oh yeah, that's right. The Primary Institute for Education of the University of London, funded by HSBC, wants everyone to be trained in Mandarin. Kind of wonder what the future then lies for the UK. I mean, you can kind of understand French and Spanish, German, perhaps even the other European languages such as Italian. But Chinese, of course they're buying so much of our infrastructure. Yeah, nuclear power plants, of course, have been bought by the Chinese. Our roads are being bought. our education systems being bought. You kind of wonder what's really happening behind the scenes, although it doesn't really take one to reach out and imagine too far. And also, on that very note, 240 schools in the UK have been brought to the attention where English is not the majority first language, and now to be further compounded still by teaching Chinese from primary school age. You kind of have to wonder, what is the plan? What is the goal? Is there a goal? So this week, I've got a week off work, and I decided that I wasn't going to go shopping, because the one thing you hate doing most is going shopping. So I did my shopping online, went to asda.com, and here I was confronted with something quite unusual when it came to buying sugar. Now we all need sugar, right? Related sugar, for cooking, baking, etc. So, and I've actually got the Asda website open right now, so if you like, you can go and have a look at this with me. Now if you go to asda.com and go to the food section, go down to sugar and baking, you'll see they have a couple of headers that are sugar and sweeteners. Now, anyone in their right mind is not going to have sweeteners, right? In fact, you'll have under the sweeteners section, they have 2 listed as sweeteners, and they have 44 sugar items on their shelves. So you click on sugar, because I want to buy some granulated, typical British sugar, silver spoon sugar. However, of all the items listed as sugar, there's actually only 2 that are sugar. All the sugar items on here are listed, apart from the castor sugar for baking and the dark brown sugars, etc. They're actually all sweetener products, every single one of them. Naturally sweet, Sweet-X tablets, calorie-free sweeteners, sweetener original, Splendor, Trivula, whatever that is, silver spoon sweetness and light tablets, liquid glucose. But there's no actual normal sugar. Not at all. I mean, they have a separate section for sweeteners and sugars, yet the majority of the items in the sugars are sweeteners. So if you didn't know what you were looking for, it's highly likely you would buy sweeteners instead of, and that's worrying. As they say, buyer beware. There may be some of you who are familiar with the Black Knight satellite. For those who aren't, and for those like me who want a more interesting examination of what's going on here, so let's talk about this. So it's not actually an urban legend at all. You can actually go to NASA's own website and see the images, and they classify it as space junk. And they also have an official explanation, which we're going to be looking at in a moment. But basically, this is an unknown satellite that looks and appears to be artificial. Now, I'm going to post some of the images of the Black Knight satellite just so you can see what we're going to be talking about here. Now, the whole story of this strange satellite begins in 1954. This is 3 years before Russia launches the first satellite, that is Sputnik 1. Now, on Friday, May 14th, 1954, numerous papers carried a statement from a guy called Major Donald Keyhoe, and he was a retired Marine Corps, and he states that Earth has been circled by 2 artificial satellites. Now, the US government scientists over at White Sands were making an effort to chart them and to find their exact locations. In fact, there's quite a few stories about this back in the 1950s, and let's just give a couple of examples of what these were. Now, there's 2 such papers. One was the St. Louis Dispatch, and the other was the San Francisco Examiner. Now, these gave national coverage of this artificial satellite that had been seen. And the story broke on August 23rd, 1954, when Aviation Magazine stated 2 satellites had been found at 400 and 600 miles out. And they were termed to be natural satellites, though this was deemed to be an impossibility, as no natural satellites were ever claimed. Now, there was a Pentagon scare that happened over the observance of these 2 unobserved satellites that were now orbiting the Earth. Now, there was a guy called Lincoln Lapaz, I believe his name was correctly, and he was an expert on extraterrestrial bodies based at the University of New Mexico. Now, he headed the identification project of this. Now, one satellite is orbiting around 400 miles out, and the other is tracking at about 600 miles out. The Pentagon thought that they were Russian. However, they were discovered not to be. Now, there was a guy called Clyde Tombaugh. Now, he was the discoverer of Pluto. Now, he was tasked by the Department of Defense to search for the mystery object. Now, Dr. Lincoln Lapaz and Clyde Tombaugh, in February 1960, department of Defence acknowledges this in an article that was published in the New York Times. Now, I've got the headline right here. Actually, I've got the newspaper clipping. That is, mystery polar satellite believed Russian spotted. This was by a journalist of the time called John W. Finney, and this was a special to the New York Times. This was published on February 11th, 1960. Now, an unidentified silent satellite has been discovered circling the Earth near the polar orbit by United States tracking stations. And the Department of Defense said today the identity of this is a mystery. It's been dubbed the Dark Satellite, and despite nearly 2 weeks of tracking. Now, it's generally assumed, by explanation that came out soon after that they put forward that it was actually the back end of a Discoverer 5 rocket. However, pictures and images, comparing them, look very different. Now, Time magazine run an official explanation as a government official propaganda piece on March 7th, 1960 in Time magazine, and they stated 3 weeks ago, headlined by the US, they detected a dark satellite wheeling overhead on a regular orbit. They were nervous that it might have been launched by the Russians. There was an uneasy sensation across the US. They didn't know what was going on over their head. The Department of Defense proudly announced the satellite had been identified. It was a space derelict. The remains of the Air Force Discovery satellite had gone astray. The dark satellite was the first object to demonstrate the effectiveness of US's new watch on space, and there was a 3-week lag in identification, was the proof that it lacks coordination, and some bugs have still to be ironed out. That really is clearly a, well, let's feel good about this, and just kind of give it the propaganda spin. The first sighting, of course, goes back much earlier than this. Now, the most important component of the space watch went into operation 6 months ago with the construction of the dark fence, as the Department of Defense puts it, kind of radar tripwire, stretches the whole breadth of the US, designed by Naval Research Laboratory to keep track of satellites when radios go silent. Notable improvement to other radars, and goes into explain where this is. Jordan Lake, and it took 2 weeks for our dark fence scientists to check back through their taped observations and for the discoverer that a mysterious satellite had first showed up on August the 15th. A Air Force surveillance centre also checked out the records to provide everything that it was indeed circling the sky. Now, the evidence from both the Air Force and the Navy pointed out that the Discoverer fired from Vandenberg Air Base in California was August 13th, so it did indeed appear to match up. And that may, for some, would have been the be-all and end-all, really. However, the most telling detail is that the satellite didn't behave like a normal satellite. Even early on, astronomers would note that they'd see it for a little while, and then it would disappear, only to appear later in a completely different orbit, which satellites that have been put into orbit don't do that. In fact, there are many descriptions of the fact that it changed colour frequently as well. But we'll look at those in a second. There's actually other stranger reports as well that are attached to the case of the Black Knight, and perhaps we should look at them. I wasn't really going to go into them, but they're worth mentioning. In fact, there was a website I saw earlier. In fact, let's have a look. Sure, I've still got it in my history. Yeah, there's a book called Disneyland of the Gods by an author called John Keel. He also wrote about the Black Knight that predates Sputnik as well, and he believes it to be of extraterrestrial origin. And in fact, that apparently it has given off radio waves since at least the 1920s, and they have been analysed by an astronomer called Duncan Lunnan, and he has some interesting, strange connotations around this, but we'll talk about that in a moment. So, Disneyland of the Gods, the book. In 1960, February, the US detected an unknown object and feared that it was neither theirs or USSR, because neither had been able to accomplish something of that size, let alone put it in orbit. That's when the oddness began. Ham operators began to receive strange coded messages. One person in particular quoted that he managed to decode one of the transmissions and corresponded it to a star chart. The star chart would have been plotted to Earth from the Earth around 15,000 years ago. Focuses on the Epsilon Bootis star system. On September the 3rd, 1960, 7 months after the satellite was detected by radar, a tracking camera of a gunman aircraft correspondence log of New Island factory took a photo of it. Some people on the ground have been occasionally seeing it for around 2 weeks at this point, and the viewers were making out a red glowing object moving in and out of this area. in an east-to-west orbit. Most satellites at the time, to do the material that was available, moved west to east. Its speed was also 3 times normal that of any other satellite that was known to be in the sky. A committee was formed to examine it, and no information has ever been made public. 3 years later, Gordon Cooper was launched into space for a 22-orbit mission, and on his final orbit, he reported to seeing a glowing green shape ahead of his capsule, heading in his direction. It said that the Mushi tracking station in Australia, which Cooper reported this to, was able to pick up on it also as travelling from an east to west orbit. This event was also reported by the NBC, but the reporters were forbidden to ask Cooper about this event on his landing. The official explanation was an electrical malfunction in his capsule that caused high levels of carbon monoxide, which induced hallucinations. So is there any more twists and turns to this strange and curious story? Well, in fact there is. A guy called Simon Scarer, who is the head of self-proclaimed Alien Communications Research Project, puts out an article, in fact, published quite a few years ago, and it talks about the space probe from Epsilon Bootis, this Black Knight. Now he says, what if we have succeeded in a way of two-way communications with an intelligence outside our planet and no one has even noticed? And this is exactly what happens, he puts. In 1928, in Eindhoven, Holland, and again in 1929 aboard a French research vessel in the South China Sea, after transmitting over the radio waves 3 sounds in rapid succession every 30 seconds, Van der Pol in Eindhoven examined the returning echoes, and they were not neatly as placed as he had sent them. In fact, that they were highly irregular. Basically, they'd been reordered and sent back. That is quite strange, ranging from 1 to 30 seconds in delay time. At the time, the discrepancies were explained away as being perhaps fluctuations in the ionosphere or magnetic disturbances. The pitch and the frequencies did not change, only the spacing of the echoes. And then, 50 years later, in the 1970s, this mystery was examined by Duncan Lunnan, who we spoke of earlier. He was a scientist in Scotland, and he plotted the vertical axis of the transmitted pulse sequence and the horizontal axis of the echo delays onto a graph. Now what appears, maybe one of those things where it can be a synchronicity, it just happens to look like it, is a constellation of Bootis, as it would have looked 15,000 years ago. I still think perhaps looking at this, it could be a case of pareidolia, looking at something that happens to look the same, and therefore you're taking it for more substance than what it is. But that's not all. Now he alleges, I don't quite know how he's worked this out, and I keep looking over this data and going, I don't get it. So I'll be honest with you, I don't give this too much credence, but I'll read it to you for what it says. It says, that's not all, there was a message hidden in the dots on the graph. Lunnan was able to translate this into simple English, the meaning of these echo delay discrepancies, proving perhaps that there is some purposeful manipulation directed by a higher order or higher other. The message is as follows. Start here. Our home is Epsilon Bootis, which is a double star. We live on the 6th planet of 7, counting outwards from our Sun, which is the larger of the two. Our 6th planet has 1 moon, our 4th planet has 3. Our probe is in orbit of your moon. I don't quite know how he got that from this graph. I have the graph here, I'm looking at it, and I don't get it. I get how it could, in fact, look like a star system. In fact, it looks like a whole star map, in fact, because there's lots of different dots and stuff. But I don't get how he worked out that entire message. So what I'll do for you right now is actually play the audio that was played back to him how he worked out this message. And do you want to hear that one more time? Yeah, so can you work out how it said anything about a double star, 6th planet, objects orbiting a moon, orbiting a planet? You know, I don't get it. Simon Kerr, he brings 3 conclusions. And the third one I've tried to read about 3 times now. I still don't get it. The one that he's an imaginative artist. It's Duncan Lunnan we're talking about here. Is an imaginative artist because he's published science fiction stories before. Professor Lunnan either interpreted the graph incorrectly, and his extrapolations therefore are more speculative, or 3, indeed an alien civilization from the vicinity of Arcturus, which is in that star system. But again, that star system is only from our perspective. Sent an unmanned space probe to monitor the Earth 15,000 years ago, and was activated by radio waves, and humans gained the technological point of evolution, and therefore a dialogue could perhaps be established. So yeah, I don't know. It's certainly up there. We can certainly see it. It's very strange. It's very curious. But I think that's really it. I mean, I look at it in the sense that it's definitely there. We have satellite photographs that show it's there. We have space shuttle photographs that show it's there. It certainly doesn't look like any rocket remains. Certainly not the Discoverer 5. I mean, really good thing here is that I can actually go onto the website. In fact, you can go to the NASA website, which is back up now, by the way, and you can see the schematic models of the Discoverer 5 and some photographs as well. They look nothing like this Black Knight piece of space debris alien satellite thing that's in space. So I don't think it's that. There's the story, of course, from the astronaut Gordon Cooper. He says it was green. You know, the story of the fact it moves around, it changes heights and orbits. Therefore, it appears to be manoeuvrable. You know, I think we're also looking at flights of fancy here as well, with the other views that it gives off radio communications and stuff. You know, I'm going to leave them where they are. I mean, the story stands on its own, in all fairness. There are something quite strange. I mean, why are the Department of Defense interested? If it's not Russian, it's not American, who did put it up there, and why? Staying with the similar theme there, over in Peru, the government office of the president has reopened their office. Closed in 2001 and now been reopened is the Office for Anomalous Airborne Phenomena Research. That is, that their Air Force, their Navy and their police are all involved, and it's kind of timely and inadequate. An urgent need for research into this kind of subject, because there really are a lot more things in the sky these days. Of course, we also know that other companies and other governments are indeed flying stuff intentionally in our skies that, you know, perhaps would seem strange. Well, of course, we have drones flying around nowadays as well. Just this past week, I was listening to the returning Art Bell. Yeah, he's come back to radio now. Of course, Art Bell was famous for creating Coast to Coast radio. When he retired a few years ago, he's now back. A new show called Dark Matter. It's worth checking out. And he had on the show this past week a guest from the show called Tobias McGriff. He's the producer. And talking about 701, which is a new theatrical film. And that's going to get a full theatrical film release. And it looks at the unsolved cases of Project Blue Book. Now, Project Blue Book, of course, has tons of stories related around it. But basically, it was the US military's official investigation into airborne phenomena and strange, weird and anomalous cases. So there's a list of icons, witnesses and compelling stories that would take too long certainly to list here, but 701 will feature new information as well as on classic cases, as well as delving into phenomena and sightings never ever seen or covered before in a UFO film. Now, it's going to be the first film of its kind to not only feature the documentary style covering of events, but also cinematic recreations of the key events. The list of the people who are involved in it is quite substantial, so I would highly recommend you take a look at that when it comes out, and also have a listen into Art Bell's new show, Dark Matter. This seems like a good a place as any to pull a pause for thought, so go get yourself a coffee. We'll be back after the break. The rabbit hole that is reality. Across the spectrum of topical talk, news that raises an eyebrow, science, technology, the environment, mysteries, strange tales, and the portia that is both informative and entertaining. As you spread our wings and catch our stride, you can find us now on the web, rabbitholethatisreality.co.uk, where you can listen, download, and watch all the episodes produced so far. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/rabbitholethatisreality, or follow the presenters on Twitter at @DefineChristian and @SylviaDragoon for commentary, insight, and conversation. This is the Rabbit Hole That Is Reality. Welcome back to the Rabbit Hole That Is Reality. My name is Kristian. Thank you for choosing to spend time with us here again. So, where are we going to be going out with this side of the break? Well, the rabbit hole always gets deeper this side, you should know that. we're going to be looking at pop stars who claim that they are possessed. We're going to be looking at ghost stories, of course, with Samhain Halloween coming up. You certainly can't resist a good ghost story. So let's just start here, really. I actually began writing and compiling this piece a couple of weeks ago, and I was going to include it in the last episode. However, with the mass piece that was the presentation that we spoke about last time in regards to Tír na Rog, Atlantis, and the Tehathti, that was a really big piece, and I really didn't want to fry too many people's brains with two extended pieces. Plus, I wanted to keep it around the hour mark. So I kind of moved that piece to this episode. It makes sense that it's here, really. With the whole possession thing. In fact, if you go to the DVD or your nearest film store, you go online or whatever, you'll find there's loads of Hollywood and independent films all about possession, the demons, ghosts, hauntings right now, because of course it's Halloween. So it's kind of suited that it's on this episode. So pop stars that are possessed. Now, while to some they are acting, performance artists doing a role. Now I know the first lesson of acting school is how to adapt and how to develop a different personality. Now, actors and artists are effectively popular eccentrics. Now, esoteric goes hand in hand with eccentricity, and esoteric, to its literal sense, essentially means hidden knowledge. It practically and basically just a pre-modern understanding of usage of psychology and social engineering. And I think they are puppets being told what to wear, what to do, what to say. It's kind of like there's an evil movement, an evil motion going on behind. That I don't think these people are possessed, but I do feel they're being told what to say for shock value. Now, current attention, of course, is going to go to Miley Cyrus. I'm pretty sure you've seen the videos and stuff. You know what I'm all about. And her new kind of personality. Twerking, jerking on stage, acting like a perverted lizard, as it were. But perhaps that's the intention. You look at the press on her since. For a little while she was this Disney starlet, Hannah Montana, and then she kind of rolled off the scene. The Disney obviously ended the contract, and now she has a new personality, a new character that she's portraying on TV. So yeah, it's worked. She has a new personality. So in an interview with Rolling Stone magazine, which I happened to read at work, Miley was talking about her use of drugs or cocaine, hallucinogenics. It's actually been joked for a long time that Hannah Montana literally is a manifestation of magic. Now, a normal girl who by day and at night becomes a different personality entirely, a duality, which of course is a prominent feature throughout occult literature. South Park famously poked fun at this as well a few years ago. Do you remember when Britney went off the rails, shaved her head and shit? In the episode, Hollywood basically was calling for a sacrifice to save the world. Her star has to fall, and to fulfill a prophecy of the world not coming to an end. So Britney, she runs to South Park. She gets on a train, runs to South Park after a failed suicide attempt, and of course is then helped by Stan Carr, Kenny Cartman. Now all the townsfolk know of the prophecy and are in on it, on the secret that the soul must die, a Hollywood starlet must die, to save us all. And at the end, because I don't want to spoil it for you, for those who haven't seen it, but Britney does die, and at the end, they all kind of like put their hands together, sing Kumbaya, and go, "Oh, the world is safe until next time. But who will be next?" And this poster of Miley Cyrus kind of rises up at the screen and fades off over the credits. And here we are, 6 years later. Do we have to have someone who dies? Is she the next one to die as a character? Yeah, possession. Possession's really interesting. Well, claiming possession. Now, let's talk about Britney, because that's who's in mind here. Let's talk about Britney. So Britney spoke of a different character who takes over her, and then she becomes herself again, and then she has no memory. In fact, Celebrity Juice magazine, a rag mag, it's kind of, them tatty celebrity gossip piece of paper. Now, I happened to do some research on this. Again, for the episode, you never go to an episode blinded. It was the 17th of January 2008 edition. There's a quote here. The source paints a very disturbing picture of Britney, or whoever she appears to be at every given moment. She's been told she has a whole British accent thing. Appears to be more, as in more powerful. Britney fully engages a different identity and multiple personalities, including a British girl. When Britney loses the British girl, she has no idea what she did in the time that she assumed that personality. And the sources tell us that Britney has a number of other identities as well. A weeping little girl, a diva, an incoherent girl, and many others. There's also an infamous video where she is being interviewed, and she's in a solemn mood, talking about her actions and her drugs, and suddenly she's nudged by someone, invisible to her right, and says, "Oh, hello," and then she instantly becomes this kind of bubbly, bouncy, very Hollywood American blonde. Yeah, I think what that has happening here is like a depersonalization, a dissociative episode that is brought on by drug use. And she's admitted, of course, to doing large amounts of prescription drugs. And it's Hollywood, there's other drugs running around as well. But now let's do a roundup on a few others who have stated and cited they are possessed. And Beyonce, of course, claimed that she was possessed while on stage, and if it wasn't for her spirit that she calls Sasha Fierce, this spirit comes on and possesses her, she wouldn't be able to perform like she does. And she's quoted as saying, as when Sasha is here, I'm not aware of my face or my body. Indeed, she surrounds herself with magical symbolism and videos that contain esoteric images. For instance, there she quite often wears the head of Baphomet on a ring. And during the Super Bowl performance, of course, very esoteric, very magical orientated. Bob Dylan is quoted in an interview as saying that he sold his soul to the devil. And the one cannot, although he doesn't actually say the word devil, he gets to the point where he says, I sold my soul to the Get My Voice, the way it is. But when the interview plays, there's nothing to indicate that he's actually indicating a metaphor. He looks like he's speaking very openly, and his demeanour is quite serious when he's talking about he had to make a deal. It was very real to him. He had a genuine fear. Now, pop stars, build public sentiment and culture far more than a world leader at this point. Pop stars have spent more than 30 years becoming hypersexualized, hypermaterialistic, which has a profound effect on America and the world thought patterns. I mean, politicians have fought many of these trends and unsuccessfully, and they're generally controlled by the whims, the world banks, and the world financiers overall anyway. But let's look at some other characters too. Nicki Minaj talks about she has a controller called Roman, who is a boy who's full of rage and violence, and that people conjured him up and put him inside me. Keisha says that she had to have sex with a ghost, and in a different interview she said she was forced to do the song Die Young, and she says that when she sings she doesn't want to sing the lyrics, and that she was controlled to do so. Then of course there's Lady Gaga. Now, she talks about the fusion of different realms of magic. Her mission to tell the world by magic is not artificial. And there's this really freaky interview on YouTube, in fact. That's actually bizarre. In fact, there's an even more bizarre legal case around this as well. And I remember picking up on this quite quickly because I saw the claim against her. And I read it with some interest back about 2011, I think it was. An assistant. The assistant is the one who's filed the legal case against her. And what it is that... I have to describe this really. She was on tour in Australia, and she didn't have someone with her in her bedroom, so she literally was panicked to the point where she was absolutely ecstatic in a really scared way, and she was begging and pleading for the assistant who was with her to sleep with her in her bedroom because she didn't want to be alone, because she had believed a ghost would come and hurt her. Now I can remember reading that story. Now, you may have too. It was very famous back in the day, and they didn't have sex or anything. She just wanted someone to sleep with and stay in the same bedroom. I can't say I blame her. When you're in a foreign country, bad things tend to happen. So this rang true. I watched the video prior to that because she said on a live show once that when she's alone at night, they come for her. They come and take her. And then in the interviewer asked who. She said, I can't talk about them. And the interviewer said, is it ghosts? And she says, yeah, his name's Ryan. And he annoys her at night, and he's a threat, and he hurts her. She says that she held a seance in Ireland for her Monster Ball tour over the weekend in an attempt to see him off and to ward him away. She contacted a spirit medium and organised a seance while over there so she could communicate with him in time to go away. She gathered all of her friends over that weekend in Belfast in Ireland and held the seance to find out what he wants, and she's convinced that she picked this up as a bad omen. Again, I'm quoting these phrases, by the way. Although most of her friends were sceptical, they agreed to take part. It's previously revealed that Gaga 24 has spent thousands of dollars on Ghostbusters and has splashed out £47,000 on state-of-the-art electromagnetic field detectors to detect the spectres when they are in her bedroom. She believes firmly in paranormal activity and will not take any risks when she's on the road, a source says at the time. It's important for her to be safer from the spirits that are attacking her. So superstars and pop stars, singers, performers, calling upon spirits, that's not unheard of. Those who indicate that presence is always with them, those who are possessed under their own claim, and those who are just observing. Something strange is going on with these people. And certainly when you look at some of their music videos as well, you certainly, say Kanye West, for instance, he talks about the Illuminati in control of music. Is it Puff Daddy does the same thing? With those white parties and stuff. I'm not going to discount the possibility that these symbols are used with the intent to subconsciously program the people taking in the information, or that they are part of some kind of exclusive club. What exactly these programs are, I think they're layered. I think you get hints from the symbols and the lyrics, and there's an overall tone to the music as well. I'm not sure is easily decipherable. This assumes there is something seriously going on in the music industry. I understand that they would be using, symbolism in the sense that they would like to invoke that power, that control. I'm calling out to my fans, give me your energy, give me your strength, give me your power. I find that to be very reminiscent of a ritual. But of course, it's all speculative. All completely speculative. We can say as much as we want, but I think until you actually sit down with these people and ask them what's really going on, you'll never know. And plus, of course, if you are speaking to them, you don't know who is speaking to you. In every culture of the world, you find stories of spirits, ghosts, entities, and so forth. Whether they are ones of beings who existed, those who are a separate entity, or those who appear to be an elemental force. And there are, of course, there's many varieties. In fact, if you look in the dictionary, then again you look at certain people's definitions, because they are different. How you want to put entity, ghost, spirit, apparition. They all have varying descriptions. I mean, there's 1,000 different TV shows talking about the stuff, from Most Haunted to Ghost Hunters being the two most well known. Then you have episodes like Sightings and Unsolved Mysteries, and the 10 to a penny current recreation shows that are doing the rounds. New one started this week called When Ghosts Attack. I mean, come on. Anyway, so I guess there was a time when I was probably more naive. I guess as you get older, you get more cynical. I guess that goes for all of us. You kind of know what I'm talking about, right? So yeah, I'm actually quite nervous. I'm quite cagey about talking about this. I've never done it before. So I wanted to tell you guys a few stories from my own experience. So I would guess really I would just, if I was to say I've had a ghost or a supernatural experience, I would say I've had 3, excluding the ones of things like photographs or experiences where it's been someone else's experience as opposed to my own. So I'll tell you them. Again, it's the first time I've done so, so please excuse my mannerism. So let's go over the first one. Now, for those who don't know Nottingham, you can kind of describe it as a city of legends and myths and stuff. And there's loads of ancient villages that are around the city. There's I'm trying to think how you would describe it best. Nottingham is a core city. I live on the far north side of the city boundary, and about 2 miles from my house there is a region called Hucknall, and beyond Hucknall there is a number of these ancient villages, Papplewick and Linby. Linking these specific areas is a number of walk paths, former rail lines, that kind of thing, and basically just small paths. In fact, one's called the Robin Hood Way, which is where we're going to be talking about right now. I was with a few friends. There was Sylvia, my friend Brent, his partner Becky, and there was a lady with us called Jo. Jo was a self-proclaimed medium at the time, and we were on our way to somewhere else when this thing happened. So we're walking down this path, linking Linby and Papplewick, and it's like a forest. Them walk paths through the woods. It's probably like a gritted track, but it goes through the woodland. And so we're walking down there, and then Jo mentions, "I feel that there's someone here," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, fair enough." The description of where we are: there's a stump to the left. Beyond that stump, there is a 45-degree drop to the left-hand side, full of ivy, and there's some trees at the bottom of that drop. And on the right side, there's a football field and a community centre beyond that. So we're on this path, and she says, "I feel that something's here, something terrible may have happened here. I feel like I'm being strangled." And it's like, okay, what are you asking her questions? In my naivety, this is like a good 8 years ago. So in my naivety, I was asking questions. What do you think is happening? How do you feel? That kind of thing. And from there, she says that she feels like someone's been strangled, and they may have been raped here. Okay. So we continued on to where we were going to go, and we left it at that. But 3 or 4 days later, we were taking the same path. Just myself, Sylvia, Brent, and Becky. Now we're in this area where she says that she felt something. We just it's night time. It's about 11 o'clock at night. We're far away from any roads. We can see through the trees. There is the community centre, which is kind of lit up still, but it's just some yellow lights in reasonable distance, about 100 metres away. But they're through the dense trees. That's the only lights we can see from there. Now, in this area, do you know the description of when you feel there is someone to your right-hand side or your left-hand side, even though you haven't looked around? You know that there's someone there. I thought I was going to turn to my right and talk to Sylvia. I looked to my right, but what I saw there was a figure. A figure was a girl. She looked about... Well, she literally lasted about a second. She had a blue and white gingham dress on. The blue and white check dresses. And she appeared to have long blonde hair. Her face looked young, even though but I can remember at the time it was young, thinking it was young. So then I turned it back to everyone else. And look at this! Did you see that? I looked back and it was gone. Now, what was important? What was important, and I do stress, is yes, she was gone. But the impression upon my eyes. Do you know when you look at a light that is bright and then you look away? So I look at my living room light right now. I look at my kitchen, which is in darkness. I can kind of see the impression, which is where the light overpowers your retina and it ties the colour cells out, and then it kind of leaves the colour impression in the darkness. So this is what happened with her. When I saw her, I looked to my left and I looked upwards, and her image still remained in the same way that I saw her. So it was interesting, scientifically, is that she must have emanated some kind of form or a waveform of light. Therefore, it bombarded my eyes, and therefore allowed me to keep, every time I flashed my eyes, when I blinked my eyes, for instance, the afterimage would appear. In the same way that when you look at a light bulb and then you look at the dark kitchen over there. So it meant that she gave off something. And that was like, well, that really was my first impression that I'd seen a ghost. That I'd seen something anyway. And from there, I needed to investigate. I needed to know. I needed to learn some information. So I was trying to find out, had indeed, based on the medium's impression, that she had someone had strangled and someone had died there. Now, I didn't know this. And Joe had only been in the area about 4 months and hadn't had a chance to look. In fact, she'd never been this far north at all. She only lived in Nottingham, or lived in Hucknall for 4 months, as I said. I took my time to go to the local studies library at Nottingham Library, and I didn't find much, to be honest with you. I really didn't. But I found that there was a newspaper that used to be available in Hucknall called the Torquay Times, and it had been discontinued in the 1980s. And it just so happened that I managed to get hold of a copy. Now, I was just going to a local collector. I happened to pick up an edition that he had, and on the front cover, I swear, kid's life, front cover, left-hand side was a story of a girl who had died. She'd been, it mentioned that she'd been strangled and she'd been killed, and she'd been sexually assaulted, and that she'd died in a path linking Limby to Papelwick. And there was a picture of her with the family, and it was the girl that I saw. It really was. I can't explain that other than that's what I saw. The newspaper was dated 1953. And from there, another strange story happened. I mean, it's not one of the stories I want to talk about, but it literally just jogged in my memory. I have a friend called Claire. Claire she's a pagan. She's a very spiritually minded individual, and she worked in my workplace at the time. She gave me a lift home, and we went to a shop called the Mystic Moon. At that time, it was located on Carlton Road, and so she's in there. She's buying incense and all this kind of fluffy stuff. I'm stood there at the counter. I'm just looking over some of the material that she's got behind the counter and under the glass cabinet. And she goes, "There's someone with you." The lady behind the counter. And again, I'm still quite naive, and I'm also a bit sceptical at the same time. And she goes, "Well, there's someone with you," and she's very young. And she says that you're here to help her, and you must help her. And well, okay, yeah, I'm still oblivious to this. So she says, "Well, she's wearing a blue and white gingham dress," and I'm just like, in my head, my jaw kind of dropped. So I says, "Well, okay, what does she want?" She says, "Well, you just need to tell her it's okay and she can move on. You just need to go to where you found her. It's where her spirit is trapped, and you are just to tell her it's time to move on, and that'll be all you need to do. So myself and Brent and Becky, we went to this location, back to this wood area, and that's exactly what we did. Again, I'm saying this because I was naive at the time. That's what I did. And then a week later, I saw Jo shopping in Tesco, and she goes, "Oh, I've had a message from that girl." She says, "Thank you." But Jo didn't know that I'd done some investigation into the girl, and that this woman at the Mystic Moon had seen her as well, let alone gone back to that location and said, "No, you can go now." Well, that's one of them. The other one, I attended a physical mediumship circle in 2008 for around 8 months, and it was fascinating. It was interesting, very much an anthropological perspective, really, why I was there, in the sense that you need to get involved to find out the truth, perhaps, find what's really going on. So I was invited to this circle, and I was there for 8 months. And some things happened, some things were explainable, some things were seen as more than what they were. But when I was there was one particular day, I remember it very vividly. Myself and a guy called Alex, I've got an interview with him actually on my YouTube channel, really, really down-to-earth kind of guy. We sat on the sofa. It was after a seance had been conducted, and we just sat there having like coffee or whatever, and this woman, of the people who were there, so I do apologise, there was myself, this guy called Alex, another guy called Alan, a good friend of mine, and the medium, Dean, and another lady whose name escapes me. It's going to bug me now. Either way, so we're the people who were just sitting downstairs. Dean has popped out for a coffee. He's got to make coffee, sorry. Alan's taking a stretch, and so there's just myself, this lady, and Alex on the sofa. And then this figure, this semi-translucent figure, kind of appears in the center of the room, then walks towards Alex, then kind of goes past his shoulder and out the wall. It is the most fucking bizarrest thing I ever saw. Of all the things I've ever seen, that was weird. And I was at that point where I couldn't say anything. And then when I did, I was like, "Did you?" Alex looked at me and I looked at Alex, and we kind of said the same thing at the same time. Did we both see that? And the answer was yes. He saw it independently to me. And this figure just walked through the wall. A expectation, and I saw something, but I thought there was both independent witnesses who saw this together, although the other lady did not. But she actually had that kind of maid impression. She had like a wider skirt on. I remember that. And it kind of looked like she was only illuminated from one side. Well, let's keep today's 14 stories on the topic of ghosts then. How about before we go into ghosts, because I've got some crackers for you guys tonight. Anyway, let's talk about this one over here. This is a ghost story without ghosts in it, but it has ghosts in it. Trust me, you'll understand in a moment. So, on the 3 men in western Chinese province of Jiangxi were arrested for killing 2 women to sell their corpses as ghost brides for single dead men. A custom is known as Minghun, and it dates back to the Han Dynasty. In the Yellow Earth highlands of western China, there's a belief that young men and women who die unmarried will go to their graves, accompanied by a recently deceased partner to be their spouse in the afterlife. It is thought that the unmarried dead will then go on to haunt the living in dreams and can ruin prosperity for future generations. So Yang Dongyan, he was a 35-year-old peasant. He confessed to killing a woman and brought from a poor family for 12,000 yuan, which is around £785 last year. Yang said he was tricked into buying the girl, who was mentally handicapped and unable to take care of herself. Realizing she was not marriage material for himself, Yang hatched a plan with Lu Shengya to recover the losses. They made a contract with old Li Longsheng, an undertaker in the Zhejiang County, known for trading dead women for ghost weddings. Yang and Li poisoned and then strangled the girl, selling the corpse to Li for 16,000 yuan, therefore making himself a bit of tiny profit. In the process, Yang and Lu, with the help of Yu Haibo, lured a prostitute into an abandoned courtyard in the city of Yanyan, where they strangled her and sold her to Li for 8,000 yuan. It's a good thing we broke the case when we did, otherwise who knows how many women would have been murdered. These guys clearly found a get-rich-quick scheme, said the chief of police of Hunan County. So if you're a bit poor, and you know an undertaker, if you want to make some money on the side, sell them to China. They seem to be buying up everything else at the moment. For those with a love of Japanese culture, the Japanese are quite consistent. And now just think about those Japanese game shows and you're thinking you're lying. Keshi's Castle, that bizarre one where everyone kind of makes poses like Tetris shapes as like this wall goes over them and they try not to fall into some goo. There's that really bizarre prank show, you know, where there's that guy who's in like a public toilet and then all of a sudden he gets whipped off and it turns out being some kind of water ski. And there's that one where he's in like one of them public loos, them blue ones, and then the roof comes off and he gets elevated up and he's on top of a mountain. Shit like that. Yeah, Japanese game shows are inconsistent, sure, but Japanese ghost stories are not. Japanese ghost stories are so consistent, it's unbelievable. It's like watching a typical episode of The Mentalist, or House, or CSI. What happens is the same archetype story. You know, you get a traveller who's walking along, meets a stranger reveals something weird about himself, victim runs away screaming, or disappears or gets eaten. But basically the formula is exactly the same. And this story is no different. Anyone who's seen my Facebook wall will know exactly what I'm talking about here. And this is regards to a story of the Shrine. In this story of the Shrine, it's a Japanese samurai warrior who's walking around Kyoto late one night, and he's accosted by a naked pervert. Basically, a rapist is about to... The fact that he's naked, of course. He's running around Kyoto. He runs up to this samurai, and before the samurai can draw his sword and carve this guy up, because clearly this perv, he's bent over, wait for it, he reveals he has a huge giant eye in his arse. And that's where the story ends. There's nothing more to it. I mean, there's two ways to keep it simple, stupid. I mean, approach to the spooky bullshit, I completely get that. But can you imagine, there you are as a samurai, you're battle-hardened, trained warrior, and the next thing you know, there's a guy in front of you mooning, eye in his arse. And has to make up his own ending. See, I wonder if that's where the story of Show Me Your Brown Eye has come from. How are we going to end today's show? We need the most bizarrest, strangest story. We're going into Halloween. It needs to be a ghost story. It needs to be weird. I think we found it. The Highgate Chicken Ghost. That's right, the Highgate Chicken Ghost. Now, okay, let's build the story around this, okay, because this is just too funny. What's funny about it is the fact that people still believe it today. Anyway, so the story begins in Highgate Pond. There's the philosopher there, Francis Bacon, who in 1626 had an argument with his friend Dr. Witherbone over how to preserve meat. So basically, Sir Bacon suggested that perhaps keeping meat cold would make it last longer. But being a doctor in the 1600s, Witherspoon found the suggestion as seen as washing your hands before surgery. To prove his point, Bacon went out and got himself a chicken, plucked it, cleaned it, stuffed it, filled it with snow, and invented the first frozen chicken. But then he caught pneumonia and died. So does that make him a martyr for KFC? I'm not sure. So the site of Bacon's death is said to have been haunted ever since, but not by a human soul. For 300 years, it has in fact been haunted by Bacon's experiment, by the ghost of the chicken he killed. Ever since after Bacon's death, people at Highgate Pond started reporting seeing a plucked, headless chicken running around in circles, pecking for grubs with a beak it doesn't have. The sightings endured all until at least World War II, where military troops stationed nearby were also trying to catch the ghost chicken, which is quite strange because why would you want to catch a spectral... What are you going to do, have a spectral chicken breast next to your mashed potatoes? Anyway, so the chicken ghost was last seen around 1970. There was a couple actually who were interrupted in their yard by the poultrygeist. Oh, that's terrible, poultrygeist. Yeah, but it hasn't been seen since. But yeah, that's perhaps, you can't edit on anything more funny than that. The Highgate Chicken Ghost. Go and share it out to people. Go and have fun. This is Kristian signing off on what has been The Rabbit Hole That Is Reality, Episode 12. Have a good night.